Hola, minasan! Welcome back for another round of One Piece. The Alabasta arc continues. Over 60 chapters. It's crazy. I had to find out for myself how long this thing is. It lasted 8 volumes. Amazing. Very amazing. And I'm on 191. It ends at 217. So we're gonna be stuck with this for the rest of the year. So sorry, writing channel. The algorithms are gonna be stifled until I get through this. And once I'm done with this at the end of the year, this is gonna go on hiatus for the time being, so I can focus on the research videos on this channel and develop those algorithms and get you fans here. All right. So last time, so the last set of chapters, Usopp and Chopper won, and Sanji had a quick and easy fight. And now Zolo and Nami are taking on Mr. One and Miss Doublefinger. And and Usopp basically left poor Nami with a dud of a weapon because while he may be a good liar and good at bluffing and playing bluff games, Nami is not one who can bluff, but one who can easily seduce. And unfortunately, Miss Doublefinger is not a dude that she could be able to seduce and trick. So, how's she gonna win? We don't know. What's gonna happen with Solo? We don't know either. So we're gonna soon find out with these next set of chapters. So let's not. So be sure to comment, like, subscribe, follow. You know you want to, and let's get reading. One Piece by H. Oda, chapter 191. She who controls the weather. Miss Doublefinger crossed her arms and created a pair of spikes shaped out of her hands, screaming out, "Double Stinger!" And her and the sparkles around her hair laughed. Ooh! She then started jabbing and ordering her spike needles at Nami. She immediately ducked, shielding her head, screaming "Eek!" as the pokes go chaka 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 chaka. Then Miss Doublefinger immediately jabbed downward, missing Nami to the sound of a thunk, and that's when Nami looked up and saw the second spike aimed right at her. Nami was able to pull herself free to the sound with her shirt torn, screaming "Ah!" as Miss Doublefinger jabbed her right into the whole thing, and she tumbled away, going "Ah!" Miss Doublefinger looked in Nami's direction, and she saw the stick fighter, the bow staff fighter, on her knees, taking deep breaths. One obstinate girl you are, Miss Doublefinger said as the streets laughed at Nami. Ooh. Miss Doublefinger stretched her finger, spread out her fingers and extended her sharp nails. Don't you realize, she said, it's useless to keep running away. You can't win, and no one is going to rescue you. Now hold still, and I'll make it quick and painless. Or do you insist on continuing your little magic show? Oh, I still have lots of tricks up my sleeve, Nami said. One of these has to work. She looked up at the pamphlet that Usopp wrote for her, and she began rejiggering her staff into water, into a water stick. She thought to herself, I just have to keep trying till I find it. And she raised the weird tri-stick up into the air. The force cast is thunder temporal. And there was a loud boom heading straight from Miss Doublefinger as she just put her hands on her hip. And it turned out to be a boxing glove connected to springs, getting slapped off to the side to the sound of thwap by Miss Doublefinger. Miss Doublefinger immediately swiped at Nami and screamed, "Finger stinger!" The whip sliced through Nami's cheek, and a little spurt of blood popped out. Yeah! Nami nursed her cheek and thought to herself,
My cheek is bleeding. Am I going to die here like this?
She pulled out the pamphlet and started reading through.
Ah, that long-nosed fool. I'll curse him from the grave, that long-nosed. It was supposed to be a weapon. Huh?
And that's when she heard Miss Doublefinger scream out,
All right, time to die. Ready? Oh.
Nami gasped. And she looked up, and there was Miss Doublefinger standing on the roof with her hands to her hip. The sound of ta-doom.
Ah, she's upside down. How?
And Miss Doublefinger slowly lifted her feet up, revealing the spikes underneath her soles. And she quickly curled up like a ball and became Sonic the Hedgehog.
Hedgehog stinger!
I was just joking about that, but apparently she is Sonic the Hedgehog, as the sound of Sonic's Sonic spin started rolling right down at her and crashed into the ground. Nami screamed, "Wah!" She skid along the side, shielding herself until she stopped.
Oh, that was close.
Until Miss Doublefinger activated her Sonic Spin Dash and started rolling right after her.
Oh, what? Stop!
Nami said, and she started running as Green Hill Zone began.
Ah, I said what? Ah, just 1 minute.
Nami screamed as she ran as fast as she could.
Can't you give me just 1 minute, huh? There's no cover around here.
She looked around, and then that's when she saw a window.
Ah, maybe inside.
And she immediately jumped in as Miss Doublefinger rolled right at her.
Give up!
And crashed right through the glass. Nami was able to shield the spikes with her staff as they both plummeted inside the building and crashed through all the seatings.
It's over. I'm going to skewer you,
she said as her face stretched out with spikes and her eyes popped up and stared at Nami.
I refuse to die,
she said as she pulled her cloak and flipped it right into Miss Doublefinger's face.
Such a horrible.
And they both crashed.
Death.
Suddenly, Miss Doublefinger, as the debris collapsed around her, started reforming into her human shape. All the spikes retracting into her body, as the building laughed at her. Ooh. Nami was already out the door. And Miss Doublefinger smirked.
So she's not a total novice when it comes to fighting.
Nami once again hiding behind some crates, catching her breath, not realizing that her long stick is kind of revealing her location. She thought to herself, she spoke to herself, she read the notes.
Oh, what was it? Earlier, I thought I saw something in the manual. Something about...
And that's when she heard Usopp's voice as she read on.
And so, the aforementioned tricks, when performed at a party or celebration, will liven up the event and entertain everybody.
Nami screamed in her mind,
"Ah, that idiot!"
and roared out loud. The combat mode instructions can be found on the reverse site, according to the notes. And Nami immediately collapsed.
Ah, the reverse side.
And her eyes opened wide. She heard Miss Doublefinger stepping out.
Now, where are you hiding? Here, kitty, kitty, kitty. Kitty, kitty, kitty. Kitty, kitty. Ha 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 ha.
Nami said, and suddenly Nami laughed.
Ah ha ha ha. I won't run or hide anymore.
She threw her scarf up into the air, and Miss Doublefinger took a long puff of her cigarette.
Ah, I've been a thief for 8 years.
She started ripping her clothes off.
In any life or death situation, I've already survived by my own wits.
She began twirling her bow staff and revealed her awesome rockin' outfit.
Don't mistake me for the helpless little girl.
She tightened her grip on the bow staff.
I see. Forgive me.
She took Miss Doublefinger took another puff of her cigarette.
What happened? Why are you suddenly so confident?
And that's when Usopp's note spoke.
Rule 1 of baton basics for combat. Know the special qualities of each of the 3 batons.
Nami aimed her staff at Miss Doublefinger.
I'm through playing around. Shaking or blowing into the baton will release air bubbles.
And Nami, wow. Nami blew right into the baton and a bubble popped out and started floating through.
The first baton creates hot air. Heat ball. Oh, it feels a bit warm,
she said as the bubble covered her face and then slowly went down.
The second baton creates cold air. Cold ball.
She sent another one. And Miss Doublefinger took another puff of her smoke.
Nice and cool. And the third baton creates electricity. Thunderball.
And the thunderball floated by, and Miss Doublefinger grabbed it with her hand.
Ouch! I felt a little shock. The batons are not perfected yet, but you could use them at parties.
Usopp's note said.
Who cares about parties?
She screamed out. And Miss Doublefinger took another puff of her smoke and tapped on some on the used tobacco, sending it to the ground.
Are you done now?
She stretched spikes out of her shoes and stood on top of them like a circus performer. She began to sway in 90-degree angles side to side, making her way to Nami. Miss Doublefinger attacked.
Sewing stinger.
And then she starts chasing down Nami with 90-degree swaying hips. Nami ran fast, reading the notes once again.
Please, let me find something useful.
However, the spike was stretched out in between her legs, piercing her skin. And she collapsed to the ground.
I'm sorry, but I have to end this now.
And she raised her right foot up with a whole bunch of spikes underneath her chanclas and was ready to stomp on Nami's back.
Stinger stomp!
Nami turned around and swung her staff.
Cyclone tempo!
And was able to not only block the attack, but sent a pair of batons right at her. It caught Miss Doublefinger off guard, and all of a sudden she flipped and crashed all the way into the what are those crates? Into the crates.
Wind.
And the batons in the form of a cross circled back like a boomerang and reattached to Nami's initial single baton, acting like a hilt.
That's it. The heat and the cool ball. The heat ball and the cool ball. When they stop spinning, the hot and cool air bubbles collide and form a bigger bubble.
She started analyzing it and noticing the hot and cold air. And she started twirling it around and spun it.
That releases explosive winds. That's an amazing Usopp.
And then she read his notes.
Cyclone tempo is like a boomerang and can be played outside with everyone after the party. Even its creator doesn't realize it. What an idiot!
Miss Doublefinger climbed up out of the debris and thought to herself,
Blast that weird weapon.
She grimaced, and Nami started having ideas.
But maybe.
And Usopp's note spoke once more.
Finally, the tornado tempo packs a knockout punch. Once struck by it, no human enemy will be able to get up ever again. However, it is absolutely a weapon of last resort. You only have one shot if you miss. It's all over.
And the sound of spikes extending, and Miss Doublefinger screaming out,
"What are you looking at?"
caught Nami's attention as she turned around.
What?
"Never look away until the fight is over."
Miss Doublefinger said.
"Mortal Kombat is nothing to take lightly, dear. I've seen Sub-Zero rip people's heads off."
And she stabbed Nami right into the face.
Ah!
She screamed out. But then suddenly her after image vanished without a trace.
For you,
she said in Dark Helmet's voice.
"How?"
She looked to the side.
I used the cold ball to change the density of the atmosphere. Drastic differences in temperature cause
Shank and Miss Doublefinger killed Nami. The end. Nah, I'm just kidding.
drastic differences in temperature cause light to reflect in unusual ways. I think this weapon suits me perfectly. A mirage at such a short distance.
And Nami reformed her staff and aimed it right at Miss Doublefinger.
I finally understand the climate baton. Now surrender.
To be continued. One Piece by Eiichiro Oda. One Piece by Eiichiro Oda, Chapter 192, Tornado Warning. At Alabama's southeast gate, Sanji, Chopper, and Usopp all gathered and stood right before the stairs. Usopp completely bandaged from head to toe from his injury, and Eyelashes and Chopper were shocked and horrified. Chopper spoke. Hey, look at there.
Oh, hey, look there.
Sanji said.
Oh, thanks. You got my goggles back. Sanji, you're the best.
when when Usopp put them on, one of the goggles popped off.
Oh, they're broken. Why, you? These are the latest goggles from North Blue. Do you have any idea what they're worth? Those are probably rebel reinforcements,
Sanji said, ignoring Usopp. More of them. Oh, that's not good. Eyelashes said.
It looks like it. Hey,
Usopp said, approaching the camel.
Where have you been hiding, Eyelashes? Let's go to the palace,
Sanji said, running with Chopper by his side.
Vivi may need our help.
Okay.
Come on, Usopp, let's go. Hey, wait for me. Can't you see I'm injured?
Usopp limped along as Sanji and Chopper made their way into the palace.
Sir Crocodile is here in Alabama. Then the rumors about him trying to take Alabama must be true.
The guard screamed out as they all looked up at the castle.
Open the gates! Open the gates! Princess Vivi is in danger!
They screamed out as Robin stood at the top with her arms crossed.
This is safe, Luis,
she said, and multiple hands stretched out and started reaching out for the guards.
Hands? Huh?
And every single one of those hands pushed every single guard at the top, on top of all the other guards, creating a guard avalanche.
Huh? What is that? Hands from the guards? No! Why?
Hey, there seems to be quite a commotion outside the gate.
Meanwhile, Vivi was presented with her father pinned to the wall. She screamed out,
Papa!
Your Majesty, Chaka said, as they saw the king pinned in by the elbows, with blood pouring down his arms and fingers. Vivi, forgive me. You risked your life to save the kingdom, but I ruined it.
Papa!
Shaka screamed out, Free the king, Crocodile. The king is correct, however, he said as he took a long puff of his cigar. Miss Wednesday, you were only able to make it back here because those Straw Hat Pirates helped you. Be grateful to them. How did you get here?
How did you get here?
Phoebe screamed out.
Where's Luffy?
Ugh, I told you the woman is dead.
That's a lie. There's no way you could have defeated him.
That fool aside, let me make one thing clear. I have no intention of sparing you or your father, he said as he took another puff of his smoke. When a kingdom perishes, its royal family perishes with it. That is the natural course of things. However, Cobra, he turned to the king. There's something I need to know before I take your throne. He stood before the king and looked right in his eyes. Since this is what I was after all along, where is the Pluton? And he took a long puff of his smoke. And everybody stared at him in shock. You scoundrel, where did you hear that name? Meanwhile, back in the streets of the capital, Nami got poked by Miss Doublefinger and screamed, "Ah! Ah!" She realized she wasn't pierced or killed or anything. She was staring at Miss Doublefinger in the eye, and she asked,
"That's an interesting weapon you have, but unless it helps you when you're fighting, it's no better than a toy." Is it?
She smiled as oh my gosh, as her bra, her boobs, her boob needles, as her boob needles kept Nami pinned in. She stretched her lips out and turned it into a spike.
Whatever its original purpose, anything can be used to kill people. It's a weapon.
And she immediately jabbed her face right into the wall. And Nami jumped out, was able to slide under and avoid the strike, and started running away. Oh my gosh.
Even a face.
She said, as she watched Nami run away quickly.
Oh, if I don't do something quick, I'm dead.
Nami thought.
Oh?
She spun Miss Doublefinger spun the baton.
But you'll never kill me with this toy. A wool sweater generates more electricity than this does.
She showed as she poked her finger inside the electric ball.
Oh, there's only one way to find out.
Nami thought to herself, and she immediately dove right in, twirling her remaining baton, screaming,
"Oh, give it back!"
And the baton spun up into the air.
I think I have something.
She thought to herself.
There's that last trick that, according to Usopp, can only be used once if I can find the right opportunity. It just might work. With the 3 types of air bubbles. I need something that will make use of this country's parched climate.
The baton returned to Miss Doublefinger's hands, and oh no, Nami got the baton back as it landed right back right into her right hand to the sound of whap. She raised the she as she kept Miss Doublefinger in her sights, she thought to herself,
if only the air had a little more moisture. Moisture! That's it. There was a trick for making rain.
She bent on one knee, put one baton on her hand, and stretched the other 2 with her arms.
Rain temple, a water show.
Miss Doublefinger said she watched as she watched the baton shoot water out like a fountain.
Sprinkler.
Nami began twirling around with the batons.
You really are desperate.
Miss Doublefinger says 2 sweat drops hanged off the back of her head.
Oh, that's not it. I don't have a plan, dummy.
She began stomping her feet, thinking of Usopp.
That's enough. This show's getting old.
And she made her hairs into spikes.
Time to draw the curtains. Oh, a sea urchin. Sea urchin stinger.
Miss Doublefinger ran right after her, and Nami blew bubbles at her.
Oh, gold ball.
Miss Doublefinger smiled.
I'll poke enough holes in you to become a beehive.
and she spun right at Nami as Nami jumped to the side, and Miss Doublefinger left behind a perfectly open hole, shocking Nami.
Oh, that would have been a lot worse than a beehive. The wall scorched. To repay you for your performance earlier, I'll show you something interesting.
Miss Doublefinger walked out the hole with her hips swaying 90 degrees, and she revealed the spikes in her fingers.
Oh, now's my chance. Eat the ball.
And started blowing multiple bubbles. And Miss Doublefinger smirked.
Hee hee.
And she stabbed herself in the shoulder with her spikes. And her veins began popping up and slowly worked its way down her arms. As Nami continued on blowing more bubbles, she thought to herself,
Oh, when moist hot air rises and is rapidly cooled by descending air, cold air, the moisture and it condenses and then,
And that's when Miss Doublefinger flexed her muscles and screamed out,
Spike you puncture! I warned you about looking away.
She wound up her punch as Nami was shocked.
Stinger rampage!
Her forearms, now full of spikes, completely and totally destroyed an entire side of the building. And Nami saw the debris falling right down onto her, and she was able to dodge a bit, but not without getting hurt first.
Ah!
She screamed as the debris laughed at her.
Ooh! Og! I must say, your dodging ability is truly exceptional. Too bad it couldn't be used for offense.
Miss Doublefinger swayed 90-degree hips towards her.
Ugh, my leg.
Nami thought to herself she saw the blood pour out from the shins.
It's hot bad. Oh, what about the other bubbles?
And she smiled.
I made it, but it's not very big.
She saw it's
a cloud.
It floated right above Miss Doublefinger. Miss Doublefinger looked up, unimpressed.
What is that? I'm not finished yet. I have to make it bigger,
she said. She began throwing more bubbles.
Cool ball, eat ball. I've had enough of this.
And Miss Doublefinger lunged in with her spiked forearms as the bubbles continued to gather around the cloud and making it bigger and bigger.
Stinger rampage!
Miss Doublefinger screamed out as she swung her forearms and struck Nami as she tried to block them, and took more damage, and blood splurted out from the wrists.
Oh!
She fell down to the ground.
Well, are you ready to die? Are you?
Nami smiled as she swung her baton, and Miss Doublefinger raised her forearm up.
Still defiant?
She bumped away a couple of bubbles, and they entered into the cloud. And suddenly, there was a spark. It started glowing right above Miss Doublefinger, and her hair started to frizz out and rise up.
Thunderbolt Temple!
Nami screamed as she completely scrunched her whole body up in a ball and shielded her head. And bolt of lightning struck Miss Doublefinger.
Ah!
Suddenly, the electricity stopped. She was smoldering in smoke. She opened her mouth, and rings of smoke puffed out of her mouth. Then she gritted her teeth.
I'll get you for that.
And she threw a fist as Nami threw her spiked fist as Nami screamed out,
No!
And she vanished.
And now for today's weather.
Nami says she walked very quietly with the tapping her bow staff on her shoulder.
Humidity and wind are both moderate with high atmospheric pressure. It should be a fine sunny day. However, in one particular area, there is a possibility of mirages and strong winds. Again?
Miss Doublefinger was now losing her cool as Nami reformed her baton and aimed it at Miss Doublefinger.
Watch out for tornadoes.
To be continued. One Piece by Eiichiro Oda. One Piece by Eiichiro Oda, chapter 193, Utopia. Usopp's notes spoke out loud to Nami.
Tornado Tempo packs a knockout punch. However, it is absolutely a weapon of last resort. You only have one shot.
Nami heard his voice echo in her mind as she took long, deep breaths from this enduring fight.
If you miss, it's all over.
Miss Doublefinger stared out at Nami as Nami aimed the now T-formed baton at her.
Oh, beware of tornadoes. Are you all right?
Miss Doublefinger asked as Nami froze in place.
Your left foot looks pretty bad. I bet you won't be able to stand on it much longer. Oh, she can still move.
Nami thought to herself as Miss Doublefinger made spikes pop up out of her hair and started charging right at her.
Sea urchin stinger! Oh!
She used the baton as a shield and plunged right into the spikes.
Oh!
Nami screamed out as she started as her foot was pushed back, screeched along the floor, and her other foot got the spikes plunged into it. She winced in pain, and she replied,
Oh, does it hurt a bit? Do you have any idea of the pain Vivi has suffered?
She said as she struggled to pull her foot out of the spikes.
Compared to that, a foot or two or three.
She felt the throbbing pain pulsating up her leg and into her brain.
It's nothing.
She gritted her teeth and snorted out a puff of smoke.
Take that.
She swung the baton right into Miss Doublefinger's face.
Tornado tempo.
And a pair of birds popped out, attached to springs, and flying past Miss Doublefinger, going beep 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 beep. She was shocked. Miss Doublefinger smirked, and suddenly the birds began spinning all over the place because Nami began twirling at them.
What?
And the peeps started going crazy. Nami didn't even realize what was happening.
What? Ah! Those pigeons are tangling!
And suddenly there was an explosion, and it knocked Miss Doublefinger away.
Ah!
Soy boricua. Nami crashed into the barrels behind her as Miss Doublefinger flew into the air.
Oh!
And she watched as she fell off the ground, leaving behind a hole in the wall in her shape. And she was completely laid out. As was the birds. It was completely laid out. Nami was shocked, and she looked at the baton. Alabama, North Block, Medi Assembly Hall, the Battle of the Back Streets. Winner, Nami. And she threw her fist up in the air.
Yeah!
In a Street Fighter pose. And suddenly the scores popped up and started adding to the total. Sir Crocodile smiled and took a long puff of his cigar. Ach, Pluton. One shot of it can vaporize an entire island into smithereens. Named for the god of death, it is the most terrible weapon of the ancient world. He stretched his arms out as he explained to everybody who already knows what the Pluton is. except for one person, Robin. And it's sleeping somewhere in this kingdom. The king gritted his teeth as the monologue continued. That has been my goal from the very start. With that in my possession, I can forge the most powerful military nation in the region.
A super weapon?
Vivi said.
In this kingdom?
A secret passed down for the crown. Chaka said. When I become king, Sir Crocodile's monologue continued, it'll be a simple matter to recruit pirates to serve under me. I will increase my political power until it surpasses that of the world government. Mine will be a kingdom of legend. The world government will never allow it, the king said, as he struggled to break free from his pinned prison. Probably not. This is precisely why I need the Pluton. I don't know where you heard of this Pluton, but I don't know its whereabouts, or whether such a thing even exists in this kingdom. The king took a long, deep breath from the pain. Yes. I fear as much, young man. I realize that the very existence of such a thing is questionable. He continues monologue as the guards try to make their way up, but keep getting blocked off by Robin. The crocodile continued. By the way, you know the palace square where the army is gathered. At 4:30 or 30 minutes from now, a powerful cannon will fire a projectile in it. You must get in! The guard screamed out. But what about the hands? Are you mad? The king said. It is a special cannon bolt that will blast a crater 30 miles in diameter. He imagined a giant hole in the kingdom. It will instantly alter the view from his palace.
30 minutes from now,
Phoebe screamed out.
But if you do that...
Oh, dear, please, child. You've tried so hard to put an end to the rebellion, but my calculations in 20 minutes the rebel forces will reach the square and the fighting will begin. He continued. Destroying the palace was such an indirect method. It's much faster to just blow up the rebels.
How can you do such a thing?
She was immediately grabbed by Chaka. Princess Phoebe.
What did they ever do to you?
Woman, then consequential. And he took a long puff of his cigar. Now then, King Cobra. He turned his attention to to His Majesty. I have another question for you. Where is the poneglyph recorded?
The poneglyph? Why would you need that record of history?
If I were to tell you, the king said. The king replied, "If I tell you where it is,
Papa.
No, I'll take you there." Oh, Sir Crocodile laughed. King Cobra, the famous ruler, you're the wiser man. Princess Phoebe. And that's when Chaka stepped up and walked past Princess Phoebe. Princess Phoebe, I can't stand this anymore. And he pulled out a weapon with shadow veiled over his angered eyes. Meanwhile, North Block, Medi Assembly Hall on the main streets. The buildings laughed at Zolo as he continued his fight with Mr. One. Ooh. They clashed blades at every angle. Mr. One's bladed leg swung over and Zolo ducked.
Three-sword style.
Zolo said.
Bull and guard.
He's like,
Bull.
as he aimed his swords at him, and Mr. One punched connected his fists together. Iron guard, he said with a calm voice, and closed his eyes. And Zolo flew right past him.
Needles.
Every single strike hit Mr. One, while Mr. One stood in that stance, and nothing happened but a light smolder of smoke. Phew, Zolo said. So, your body is as hard as sword metal, Zolo said as he looked back at him and sheathed his blades. If I want to cut you, I have to be able to cut steel. That's right. Slashing and hacking have no effect on me, son. Well, that's too bad. I can't cut steel yet, so I can't defeat you. Zolo crossed his arms. Then he suddenly removed his jacket. So what will you do, boy? You got some integrity? No, I feel sorry for you, Zolo replied. I've been waiting to be driven into a corner like this, so that I could take it up a notch in strength. And the streets laughed. Ooh. When I defeat you, he crossed his swords together. That means I'll be able to cut through steel. He smiled. To be continued. One Piece by Eiichiro Oda. One Piece by Eiichiro Oda, chapter 194, Cutting Steel. As Mr. One connected his fists together, the wind laughed at him. Ooh. I hate to disappoint you, but ever since I gained my dice power, no swordsman has ever made a scratch on me. The wind lightly kicked up the sand on the street, as Solo pointed his swords at him. No swordsman can defeat me, Mr. One said. Yeah, Solo replied. I understand, but you should put your stories from the past in a photo album. I have no idea how many swordsmen you've fought over the years. But you've never met someone like me. He pointed at him. Good. You took a good fight. That's some integrity. Thanks, Baldy. Solo smiled as as he clashed leg sword with his swords with Mr. One's leg sword to the sound of clang. How long can you last? Do you have the integrity to take me down? Right back at you. Solo smiled as Mr. One released himself from Zolo's block and swung his leg underneath. His fingers stretched out and aimed right at Zolo and turned into swords themselves. Razor claws! Mr. One screamed out, and Zolo blocked it with his sword to the sound of cling. Then he stretched his fingers out and tried to swing again, only for Zolo to block it. And then a flurry of strikes started coming right at him, and Zolo blocked every single one until he switched it up, and Mr. One turned his leg into a sword and swiped at Zolo's head. Zolo slid back and stopped on one with the stretching his whole body out. He saw Mr. One standing with in a crane position, and Zolo brought out his third sword and put it into his mouth. Mr. One stood in curiosity as Zolo stretched across his arms.
Oni.
And that's when he realized what was going to happen. He took a defensive posture, and Zolo flew right past him.
Gimme.
And Mr. One took a whole bunch of strikes in the chest, and he collapsed over. Zolo immediately spun around right back at Mr. One.
Tiger.
And his swords connected with Mr. One's chest, inflicting pain on him.
Trump.
And his sword slammed Mr. One right into the ground, sending sand up into the air. Zolo landed on his feet as the dust laughed. Ooh! And he took the swords out of his mouth and looked out at Mr. One as he stood up on his feet, and the streets laughed back. Ooh! I told you, I got integrity. Not even a scratch. That's a bit depressing, Zolo said. And you got up after I flattened you. That's a first for me. Of course. You never met someone like me before. Someone with integrity. Huh. You and your integrity. Soon I will take you down with... Whoa! And Mr. One swiped at him with a sword leg as he screamed, "Ah!" He looked down at Zolo going, that's right. Zolo gritted his teeth and blocked with his sword. He thought to himself, this guy's a human blade. Every part of his body is a cutting edge. He continued blocking every single strike coming right at him. Mr. One tried every form of technique from a handstand to a straight kick to a backward slash until he finally caught Zolo off guard and forced him to tumble backwards. "Ah," Zolo said, and he got back onto his feet quickly. Hup! And suddenly he was met with an attack. Daisy blades! Mr. One struck, and then immediately turned his hands into a Hadouken. And before Zolo knew it, the building behind him got sliced. But that was because Zolo was able to block it with his swords in an X formation. This guy, Zolo thought to himself, off with you. And he immediately pushed into him, Hadouken! And Zolo got knocked into the building, the already cut up building, and the whole entire thing collapsed onto him. Gwa! Zolo said as the sky laughed at him.
Ooh.
And now, buried under the debris, Mr. One crossed his arms and waited patiently. He thought to himself, I've pushed myself harder than anyone. I've been to the brink of death 1,000 times. So what am I lacking? He looked at Zolo's arm, covered in blood, completely pinned down by a giant cinder block.
Sensei.
Eh?
I heard there are men in this world who can cut through anything, even steel.
Very young Mr. One said.
Is that true?
Yes, that's true.
Sensei said.
Watch this sheet of paper very carefully, Zolo.
Oh, that's Zolo. Dang it. Dang it. As Zolo remained pinned in the debris and blood pouring out of his arm from the cinder block that's crushing it, he thought to himself, I've pushed myself harder than anyone. I have been to the brink of death 1,000 times, so what am I lacking? Blood continued to drip and forming a pool.
Sensei.
Zolo said.
I heard there are men in this world who can cut through anything, even steel. Is that true?
Yes, that's true, Sensei said. Watch this sheet of paper very carefully, Zolo.
The paper slowly floated into the air, and Sensei swiped.
Ta!
He hit the side of the paper. Nothing happened.
It's still in one piece.
Zolo said.
Listen, Zolo, there are swordsmen in this world who are able to not cut anything.
Huh?
These same swordsmen also have the ability to cut through steel, and with the same instrument.
Oh.
The pinnacle of swordsmanship, he smiled, is the power to protect what one wishes to protect and cut what one wishes to cut. A blade that injures all that it touches isn't really a sword. Do you understand?
He sat on the floor with Zolo.
Sensei, I'm gonna become a swordsman who can cut through anything.
Zolo, did you hear a word I said?
No, not really. I'm a kid.
Oh.
And after finishing being knocked out of his flashback, Mr. One caught attention and knew that Zolo was still in there.
Go ahead. Try to wound me. You'll never cut me if you're the one always taking the beating.
Unfortunately, Zolo said as anger veiled his whole entire body, you're not going to see me cut steel. And he raised the whole entire broken building with one hand and pulled it all the way up. He smiled down at Mr. One, because when I do, that'll be the end of you. His eye was blood poured out of his eyes and his vein bulged.
Oh yeah?
Raw!
I'll dice everything in sight,
Mr. One said. And Zolo thought to himself, a sword that doesn't cut anything, eh? Will it cut this hernia that I just developed from throwing this whole building? To be continued. One Piece by Eiichiro Oda. One Piece by Eiichiro Oda, chapter 195, Mr. Bushido. Zolo just finished gaining another herniating another disc as he threw a giant building onto Mr. One's head.
Fool,
Mr. One says. He crossed his arms, and Zolo thought to himself, a sword that cuts anything. It cuts nothing, but it cuts steel. I don't know what it all means. And then he spoke out loud.
But to push and keep pushing. That is the true way of the sword.
And that's when Mr. One flung his arms and screamed out, Atomic Dicer! The building turned into perfect sugar cube blocks and immediately collapsed all over the place. Zolo lunged and screamed out,
Until I defeat you.
Mr. One was able to spread apart the blocks that he created and saw Zolo in his onigiri stance. He lunged right on in and started slicing at Mr. One, and Mr. One blocked every single strike until he was able to get a jab right in and knock Mr. One back. He stumbled, Mr. One stumbled, going, ugh, as he watched Solo position himself for another strike.
Whoa!
And Mr. One lunged back, swinging his sword leg, only to be blocked.
Fiend!
Mr. Solo said as he swung and struck Mr. One in the face. Mr. One slid back and used his hand to slow down.
Grab! Grab!
Mr. Zolo said as the image of a crab appeared behind him, and he swung very hard into Mr. One's neck, knocking the Baroque Works fighter onto the floor. He tumbled back and got back on his feet as Zolo took long, deep breaths.
Oh, you're an irritating man, you know.
So are you, Mr. One said. And they both and Zolo started lunging right at him as Mr. One stretched his arm out and turned it into circular saws. Don't mistake me for a swordsman. I have lots of other weapons to dismantle you with. Buzzsaws.
If you're not a swordsman, then maybe you're an excavator.
Zolo said as he charged at him, and the wind laughed at his remark. Ooh. Mr. One replied, I'm an assassin. And they clashed the swords once again, blades creating a flash of light that blinded the area. Sparks popping all up. Solo thought to himself, sparks. How fast are those blades spinning? Very, very fast. About 360 revolutions per second. He's going to tear me to shreds, Solo thought to himself. And he immediately pushed the arms away with his swords. Excavation work is impossible for me. I'd make too much of a mess. Blast, Solo said. And he ended up getting punched in the face and blades sliced through his chest once again. Blood splurting out, adding more scars to him. Solo's eyes immediately felt the pain as gaping wounds began gushing blood out. And he gets punched directly in the stomach by the drill punch. Wah! And as he collapsed onto his knees, nursing his wounds, Mr. One spread his arms out. An instant's miscalculation brings death. And Solo immediately felt everything, and his swords flew up into the air as Mr. One swiped at him with his blade fingers and sent him flying into a pillar. Solo collapsed onto the ground, and face first, and his body sprawled out. Mr. One took a lick at Solo's blood. Spicy. It lacks integrity. You're not one of the hot ones, he said as he approached Solo. But I'm definitely gonna turn you into a Scoville 10 million. Huh? He saw Solo take a long, deep breath. You're still alive? Huh. Solo smiled as he slowly got up to his feet. Blood poured out like a waterfall out of his wounds. And he thought to himself, don't turn your back on him. You're unarmed. Why keep struggling, boy? And he jumped right on in and delivered an attack. Tower Crusher, he said out loud because there was a tower behind Solo, and not because it was an awesome attack he came up with. Blood gushed out and exploded out of his chest and continued to do so as the pillar collapsed around him. And the cracks started to form above at the very top. I'm having bad luck with stone today, Solo said, looking up at the debris slowly raining down on him. As it continued to crack and crack, piece by piece, bit by bit, it fell right on top of him into a big pile. And Mr. One walked away, cracking his neck like a hardcore warrior. And he continued on walking away, and he thought of what Solo said. I wonder if the others are okay. He stopped, and he looked back. And there he saw Zolo standing very tall, covered in blood, to the sound of Loom. How can you possibly stand up? I cut you to ribbons. And how did you dodge all that falling rubble? To which Zolo thought to himself, dodge? No, that's not it. I knew where the stones wouldn't fall. My sword. He looked at the debris. It's under that rock. I know it. And he began to move the debris around as Mr. One watched in disdain. What? Solo picked up his sword, the only sword he had left. I've had this feeling before. Everything around me was eerily silent. He thought to himself as he heard his heart beating rapidly fast once more from the intense pain and loss of blood. My heartbeat was like distant thunder. It was like standing at the gates of Hades, watching Zeus get laughed at by Disney. The falling rocks. I could feel something alive in them. He looked up. Not just a presence, something more distinct like breathing. The rocks breathing. He continued to think to himself as Mr. One stood there and not doing a final blow. Trees with heartbeats of their own. The earth itself breathing. Is this it, Sensei? Listen, Solo. The Sensei said in his mind. There are swordsmen in this world who are able to not cut anything. To not cut anything, Solo thought to himself. Is that like hearing the breathing? Is this the power to cut steel? Am I having a Conan the Barbarian moment and understanding the riddle of steel? Now it makes sense. Now I know how Arnold Schwarzenegger feels. What's your trick, swordsman? Mr. One said, not making a move on Zolo for some reason. You took too many hits. You lost too much blood. Don't you know you're dead? I'm freaking Kenshiro, you know. Kenshiro, you are not, Zolo said. And he thought to himself, I can hear it. The breathing of his steel. Alright, boy. Fine. My next blow will put you down for good. Mr. One raised his fingers up, ready to take shape of the sword. As for Zolo, he swiped at the palm tree. My sword understands my will, he said out loud, as the tree branch swayed to the side and not sliced off. He aimed it at Mr. One to the sound of thump. He thought to himself, all that's left is for me to find out whether I possess the power to cut through steel. Mr. One took a offensive posture and said out loud, you think you can defend yourself against me with just one sword? It's all right, he replied. I don't need to defend myself anymore. Prepare to die, eh? Suit yourself. One sword, one strike. Solo took his JoJo pose. Lion strike. Atomic Daisa. And they both lunged right at each other for one last strike. And suddenly, Mr. One went right past him and completely fell onto his knees with blood spilling out of his shoulder and chest. My thanks, Solo said, and thought to himself, now I'm stronger. And he sheathed the sword. To be continued. One Piece by Eiichiro Oda. Well, that was a good fight. Good pair of fights there. I don't know how I feel about the Miss Doublefinger and Nami fight, though. I mean, it was okay. But I get that it was all a joke. But I feel like that undermined Nami's growth there. You know, how can I explain this? I understand that, you know, it's trying to be comical, especially because it's Usopp. But I don't know how I feel about her new weapon. I really think she should have just stuck to just being a regular bow staff. You know, I kind of get it that, you know, that she needs something new. But honestly, the three batons that that could separate and merge, I like the idea. I just wish that it wasn't a joke thing. You know what I mean? I know that there's supposed to be levity and bad things happen to Nami. You know what I'm saying? Especially if it involves like Usopp or something. But you spent the whole panel. Oda-san spent a whole panel, like a whole page of Nami talking about how she needs to get stronger. She needs to be a fighter. More of a fighter. Saying like had a whole completely new outlook and everything, and then reduced it to a whole joke. And I think that was bad. I'm of the opinion that that was a very bad call. I would have understood, her having difficulty understanding the thing, but the fact that Usopp's jokes are layered on top of it really hurts. I really feel like this hurts. What should be Nami's growth. It shouldn't have been treated, comic. Like the comedy should not have been like this fist, this little boxer glove thing popping out. The comedy should have been like more like I would say the comedy should have been Usopp's messaging was not clear and the attacks do what they're supposed to do, forming the bubbles and everything, but not the way she thinks it's doing it because she's she's not understanding Usopp's, terminology. You understand what I'm saying? Like she's misunderstanding what Usopp is saying because Usopp is Usopp, but she's screaming out thunder tempo, and out comes a fist that gets slapped to the side. She's not a comic relief, is what I'm saying. Nami's not a comic relief. This is something I would expect Usopp, to be doing. Like this is something Usopp would be using, is what I'm saying. And I understand, it's supposed to. I understand that it's supposed to be funny because it was Usopp who made it and screwed it all up. But at some point, it wears itself out, and when you have Nami, sitting there having a moment, saying, "I want to get serious with fighting," pull my weight and everything, you gotta at some point drop the jokes. And I feel like the jokes overstayed its welcome at this point. Like right here, revealing that the combat mode instructions are on the reverse side. Okay, I mean, she's getting stabbed, she's getting chased around by a maniac and everything, and she's not getting stronger by any means. I would have, like I said, I would have had Usopp's phrasing, to make sense from his point of view on how to pull off the attacks. Like these are like they should be actual attacks, like the legit attacks, but she's not using it correctly because Usopp's phrasing doesn't make any sense to her. But then she figures it out, and then they start doing what they're supposed to do. I don't know about the weather motif behind the baton either. There's too much setup that she needs to do, and that requires the opponent to be either inexperienced or carrying an idiot ball. Especially since these all should have done something really, but that's another major issue. She has to be fast to connect them together and everything. It's too much for a weapon. It's too much for a weapon, and really requires. Like, this was the cool part. This one was cool. I like this one. You know what I'm saying? Where it took that little cross shape and she flicked it like a boomerang and it comes right back and attaches. Now, I think that was cool. I like that. I like that as a weapon better. All this interchanging, it just takes a gun. She's busy interchanging. That's it. Dead. In fact, Miss Doublefinger has good reach. She could have just as easily, while Nami was fidgeting around, just go flick, and that's it. Just hit, she's got good accuracy. Hit the heart right there. Nami's dead. she needs a lot of time to be able to do it. Yeah, this was not a very well thought out fight. Well, it was not so much the fight in and of itself; it's the weapon. It's not a very well thought up weapon. The idea is great, the concept is great, but the execution is just very poor. It's very, very, very poor, and I feel a little disappointed. You know, right idea, but not a very not a very good, strong execution. But eventually, she'll win. Meanwhile, outside the gates, everybody's trying to storm in because now they know Sir Crocodile's behind the whole thing, and Robin is blocking them out with her million hands. With her million hands, which is which is pretty much throwing everybody off. The king, Sir Crocodile brought the king, pinned him to the wall, and started monologuing again. He's asking for the Pluton, which is a very, very dangerous weapon. It can actually, create a giant crater, basically, wipe out. But yeah, he's already making his intentions known. The fight's still continuing on the streets of the capital. I didn't even catch this, but those are boobs. She got boob needles. That's hilarious. Miss Doublefinger has boob needles. And then she can make her lips a needle too. And somehow Nami managed to dodge all of that. It's boob needles. Okay. But yeah, Nami ends up having a plan, and once again, like I said, at this point, Miss Doublefinger could just flick a needle while Nami's doing all this and hit her in the chest and right there in the heart. Game over. She didn't need to stand there and going through doing all of this. Honestly, I know Shonen's got a Shonen. I know Shonen has to Shonen, but it is taking me out of the fight and everything, and the whole bubble thing, setting up all these bubbles again. It's just, and then she comes up with this one here. Miss Doublefinger comes up with Popeye arms with spikes, and again, I don't know. This was a weak fight, honestly. I feel like this is the weakest fight. It's trying to play it up for laughs at times. Then it's trying to be serious. The whole concept of the staff is just not good. It's just not good. Nami was able to basically had a whole bunch of free moves. She had enough free moves that she was able to create a cloud and then create a whole storm, a thunderstorm, and of course the cloud had to be in the right place at the right time for Miss Doublefinger to get hit by it. Yeah, this is a weak weapon. This is a very weak weapon for Nami. But yeah, she did win. She did beat Miss Doublefinger while walking with a injured leg. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. Let's see. How did she win? Yeah, she won. She won with a trick. That's right. The peeps here. These little peeps here, completely. It's supposed to be tornado tempo, but it turns out that the tornado tempo are the birds itself. They create the tornado on its own, and then knocks her out. She gets knocked out. The pigeons get knocked out. It's yeah, fine. Fine. We get a whole monologue from Sir Crocodile, which I can understand. In this instance here, yeah, he could get away with this one because not only is the king hostage and pinned in, Sir Crocodile is right there within range of the king, so he could kill him instantly. And it is Chaka's duty to make sure that the king and Vivi are protected, so he can't make any crazy moves. So basically, Sir Crocodile has them dead to rights. You know, he's in total control of the whole situation. So this monologue is perfectly fine happening here, and basically revealed everything. The Pluton can vaporize an entire island in one shot. Of course, nobody can genuinely confirm because it's a secret that was passed down, generation to generation. Phoebe wasn't aware of it yet. But ultimately, we got a whole big spiel. Meanwhile, the guards are stuck trying to get past Robin. So, this was fine. The monologue was fine because, again, Sir Crocodile has the king pinned in, and he's got Robin to back him up, and he's a very, very, very powerful. So he can, so he's really in control of the thing. Sort of like in Pulp Fiction, Jules and Vincent. You know, they got control of the whole situation while Brad and his friend just sitting there, unable to do anything. It's that kind of situation. But then Chaka decides to make his move. Meanwhile, Zolo and Mr. One on the main streets are having their fight, which was pretty good. This was a good fight. Ridiculous fight. I mean, Shonen's got a shonen. Rule of cool. It was full of rule of cool, but basically it was all about Zolo being able to cut everything, and that includes blades. But for the most part, this was pretty awesome. I like this one. I really did. When he just goes, he's like, and he just stands there and takes all those attacks. That was pretty cool defense. It's pretty cool. And mind you, he's not forming any type of metal on. There's no metal on his body or anything. This was just full on brute force muscle block. So yeah, that's pretty scary. I know it says clang clang clang, but it's not showing any type of metal formation in the artwork. It seems more like this is full on pure muscular constitution going on here. And a pretty cool posture on top of that. Very good, you know what I'm saying? But, yeah, Solo's having the big fight of his life. And he's happy because he has a chance to really improve himself. Especially because Mihawk still affects him. But, yeah, that's all we pretty much getting is a whole lot of fights. It moves. The panels move very nicely. It's got it's really got a nice animated flow to it. So you can see the fingers, and then the clanging, then the parrying, and then he comes in with the kick. You see him slide. It moved nicely, and then he puts the sword in his mouth, all in one fling. So yeah, for the next couple of chapters, we have this going on, one after another. This epic little strike where the building gets all sliced up and collapses onto Zolo, which sends him into a flashback. As he talked with his sensei about slicing things, and his sensei is trying to explain to him that not everything has to be has to cut in order to be good. He's trying to impart wisdom. But Zolo's like, he still took it as, I gotta slice everything. Oh man! And then we get this crazy epic and herniated image here on the bottom right. Let me see here. Yeah, you can see the scaling of Zolo in comparison to. My gosh, man, he made. Oh man. No, I'm just like amazed and baffled by this decision to have Zolo do this, saying he flings it up at him. Of course he turned it all into cubes, which is hilarious. Like I said, Shonen's got a shonen. Shonen's got a shonen. Rule of cool, that's fine. because in the final chapter, everything is winding down now with Zolo and Mr. One. Again, this only lasted two chapters, which is great. Mr. One turned it, diced it up, straight out of the movie Cube. That whole opening scene in Cube with that poor guy, got turned into cubes, just like that, just like that, and yeah. Basically, they're just fighting and clashing and sword clashing. Once again, the panels move nice and easy. He pulls out the buzzsaws. He formed his arms into buzzsaws here, and created sparks and everything. Of course, Mr. One makes it very clear that he's an assassin, and he finally gets a good perfect strike on Zolo. Once again, Zolo getting more scars. The man's he's gonna have scars for tattoos at this point all over the body. Like those tattoo artists that like to have the tattoos all up and down their body and arms and everything. That's gonna be Zolo, but replace the tattoos with scars. It's already that point. It's already that point. But yeah, he got once again, he completely devastated Zolo, but Zolo's a madman. He's a madman because after taking this direct strike, all of a sudden, he's standing up. Again, Shonen's got a Shonen. I'm always gonna make that very clear. That Shonen is always going to Shonen. They're always gonna Shonen. But nevertheless, Zolo goes through a whole brain fart about cutting steel and everything, which is all nice and everything, and showed that it's one of those it's a Bushido thing. That's why it's called Mr. Bushido. That's why the chapter's called Mr. Bushido. That's why it's called Mr. Bushido. It's all philosophical thought about the sword, the blade, that the riddle of steel. He swings the sword at the branch and doesn't damage it. So he already can do that. It's basically what it's trying to say is that his sword can do what his sensei said. It doesn't have to cut. But he still wants the sword to cut everything. So he can have his sword not cut everything and still cut everything. And that's basically what Zolo's trying to get at. He can do it. He could do both ways with no problem. And essentially pulls off this epic attack called Line Strike with quite possibly a very epic splash page right here to close it all out. Just look at that. He just there was no in between panel. It's just him holding it straight out of Blazing Saddles, the Waco Kid, where he just goes and then you see the bullets, but you still see it, but then you see him crossing his arms on the next screen. You don't see the full movement of the hands or anything. It's one of those things. Solo being epic. Rule of cool. So yeah, that was it. That was the 5 more chapters. 5 more chapters of One Piece. Oh my gosh, this is the Alabasta arc. At the very least, the Alabasta arc is moving. The fights are moving. Aside from Usopp and Chopper's fight going more than 3 chapters, everybody's been moving nice and smoothly. It's all been 3. It's been like around 2 to 3 chapters. Sanji's fight lasted 3 chapters. Nami's lasted 3. Zolo lasted 3. So yeah, that was actually pretty good. Of course, I'm hoping that Mr. One is done for, and he doesn't get another chapter where he gets up and be like, haha, your blade did nothing to me. Oh gosh, please don't do that. Please don't do that. Oh my gosh. Yes. So make sure to head on over to Amazon.com and BarnesandNoble.com and grab yourself a copy of The Impossible Man Strange Fantasy novel written by me. You'll find links to the book down below in the description, along with links to other merch such as pins, stickers, t-shirts, music. Please enjoy the products. Thank you for your patronage, and I look forward to seeing YouTube videos of my book, reviews, lore videos, fan videos, and so on. And if you're interested, you can join me on my live multi-stream on Twitch and Kick every Monday through Thursday, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm pointing over here, not here, over here. And remember, Shonen's gonna shonen. So until the next set of chapters, thank you all for joining me, and I wish you all a good night, buenas noches, and oyasumi nasai.